It was released in the beginning of the year in '89, and it actually did very well. And they were very happy with the results of the movie. Not maybe so happy with the critical results, but certainly the money was good. It didn't exactly set the world on fire critically. In fact, it got just about the worst reviews since World War II. I remember particularly, you remember the bad ones particularly, but you don't really get very many that are quite as concise as this. The New York Times said, "The Burbs is as empty as a movie can be without actually creating a vacuum," which is a pretty good line. But it pretty much summed up the general reaction to the movie. I think like Dave Kerr liked it in the Chicago Reader. It was about it. However, it has come to my attention in recent years that, remarkably, this movie is incredibly popular. I just came back from Europe where I went to a series of festival retrospective kind of things. And usually it's Gremlins that I get, the stuff about. And then this time it was a complete turn. It was The Burbs. The Burbs was the most popular movie with this crowd that I had ever made. And, since the release of the movie, it's become quite a cult favorite, and it's got its own websites. It's got people who have Burbs parties, and they go and they do the dialogue, like Rocky Horror Show. It is kind of odd. And I guess part of it is just the appeal of the concept, which is that every neighborhood has something weird going on in some house or other that nobody knows what it is, and there's a lot of gossip about various people in the neighborhood. And I know that when we were making the movie, I canvassed a lot of people in the cast and crew, and a lot of people said, yeah, I did have, there was a house in our neighborhood where there were creepy people. We never find out who they were or why they were creepy, but they were creepy. And so I guess maybe this is a more of a universal theme than we thought. It's a very 80s movie, and it came right at the tail end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. The Burbs is a Reagan-era movie. I mean, it was the Reagan era. And, when you go into the 80s, there's a lot of blue velvety kind of movies where it's about what looks fine on the outside is actually all corrupted and filled with maggots on the inside. But the town with a secret plot goes back, to Silent Days and, Bad Day at Black Rock. I mean, there's a lot of movies about towns who have facades that are not what they seem. And so this sort of fits into a general tradition. But yeah, the 80s, like the 70s before them, were a particularly unusual time in themselves. And, to today's generation, the 80s is what the 50s was to my generation, which is something you look back with nostalgic fondness because you were young and, you're going to be immortal and you're never going to die and all that stuff. But there is a tremendous fondness for what I call retro cinema, which is 80s movies, and people have made homages to 80s movies. They've made faux 80s movies, and the 80s as a period does seem to have a particular resonance. Now, how long that'll last, and whether this generation that's being brought up on Transformers and stuff is going to find any merit in the movies of that period, I don't know. But it also coincides with the rise of Spielberg and Lucas and the blockbuster mentality and all that. And I think it was kind of an exciting period to be making movies, and maybe that's something that people think of.